Yes, sir.
Call the meeting to order.
Nichols,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Flesh,
Yes.
Williams, Fox.
First on the agenda this evening, we have a presentation, Williams Keepers LLC 2014 Audit and Financial Report. Bruce?
I'll let Roger do the introductions.
Okay.
Good evening, Council. It's our pleasure to present to Council and the audience our 2014 audit results and, of course, a copy of our financial report for the fiscal year ending 2014. To present the audit reports, we have Heidi Chick, who is a managing partner of Williams Keepers and, of course, specializes in managing governmental audits. Heidi?
Pleasure might be stretching it just a tad, but I enjoy it. You may not. So I do have a PowerPoint presentation just to hit the highlights. If you have any questions as I go along, just stop me. But like I said, there's so much information in here. I'm just going to try and hit the things that I think are worthwhile pointing out. Just a little bit of background about me. Roger introduced me. I'm an audit partner. I also head up our entire accounting and auditing practice, and I do a lot of governmental accounting. Kelly Schwartz and Amanda Schultz were the two that managed the engagement this year. Kelly was the manager. Amanda Schultz was in charge. We're lucky enough that we have a large enough governmental staff that we're able to rotate them every couple years. And there's a little bit of information about our governmental team. It's an area that we specialize in. This year, there were 2 reports issued as a result of the audit, the opinion on the financial statements, so we'll touch on that, the communication to the mayor and the city council. The management letter was not required to be issued this year, which is actually a good thing, so we'll touch on why we didn't have to issue that this year. Also this year, because you did not spend more than $500,000 in federal awards, you also did not have to have what we call a single audit. That's what's requiring us to, normally we'd have 2 additional reports in there to go over and some other information. So you did not have to follow governmental auditing standards on top of regular auditing standards. So this year is actually a little bit thinner than it was in prior years, and that's why. The City of Mexico issues what's called a Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, or a CAFR, and it really goes above and beyond what you're required to do. There's an introductory section that has a lot of really good information in it, and the section that I think is really interesting is the statistical section, because this has 10 years worth of data. So you can go to that section, you'll see the last 10 years worth of your revenue, the last 10 years of your expenditures, and a lot of different information. So you're able to see trends and how things have changed over the past 10 years. And those 2 sections are not required, but it's part of doing a CAFR. It's submitted to an entity called Government Finance Officers Association. They go through your report, they make sure it does what it's supposed to do, it has everything in there, and you actually get an award for it. You got the award last year for your fiscal year 13 report, which was the 25th year in a row that you got it. Obviously, very exceptional, excellent financial reporting, and we anticipate that you're going to get it for your fiscal year 14 report as well. It's really just a symbol of excellence in reporting. A lot of good information out there for anyone who wants to know about the City of Mexico. That's what the word looks like. I think now you get a plaque and get little
Adhesive stickers.
adhesive stickers. You used to get a plaque every year. Now you just get little adhesive stickers. But that's what it looks like. There's really 7 components to government financial statements. I've got them all listed there. Really the main thing to point out is you actually have 2 sets of financial statements in this book. One is called government-wide. It puts all the activities for the city in one place, kind of like the rest of the world. And then the second set of statements that are in there are the fund financial statements, which you're accustomed to, where there's a financial statement for each fund. So there's actually 2 sets of financial statements in here, whereas the rest of the world, there's just 1 set of financial statements. And that's part of the reason that makes it a lot thicker. But those are the 7 components of the financial statements. We'll kind of touch on each one a little bit. The independent auditor's report, I know I touch on this every year, but it's because I think it's important to understand what an audit is, and really this is what you have us come in and do. And so it's the one that's on our letterhead. If you look in there, it's a couple pages back in. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Should be on page 1. It's going to be the page that looks like this, Williams Keepers at the top. So the first section really just talks about the statements that we audited, the time period, pretty basic. The second section talks about management's responsibility. And really, even though we prepare the financial statements, you're really responsible for everything that's in them. We prepare them because it's easy for us. This is what we do every day. We've got templates set up. But Roger and Vicki and Bruce go through and review everything in detail, accept responsibility for them. And it's also management's responsibility to have an internal control process that allows you to produce financial statements in accordance with accounting standards. Our responsibility is to follow auditing standards and our guidance that tells us what to do in a financial statement audit. An audit's intended to provide reasonable, not absolute assurance that everything in there is materially stated, fairly stated. When we do an audit, we go through what we call a risk assessment process where we understand who does what, how transactions flow, if things were going to go wrong, where do we think they would be, where do we think they'd go wrong, and that's really where we focus our attention. So we don't look at every transaction, but we go through a process where we make judgments about what we think we need to look at. And at the end, we think we've done enough work to give an opinion. The opinions are on there, they're unmodified. What that means is it's the best opinion that you can get, but your financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects in accordance with accounting standards. So really, that's what you want. It's the best opinion. And then there's some other paragraphs in there that talk about the other information that's in the financial statement. So again, unmodified opinion, which is the best opinion that you can get. Management's discussion analysis, Roger actually does do this section. It's on pages 3 to 14. It's really the story of what went on in the city in the prior year. There's comparisons to the prior year, some explanations. It's intended to be a plain English section of the report where you don't have to be an accountant, a CPA or anything, and you can read it. And it kind of hits the high-level financial highlights, kind of goes through the financial statements, gives you some information, does some analysis, some economic and other factors. So I always tell everybody, if you don't read anything else, that's the section that you should read, because that really does talk about what went on during the year. The entity-wide statement, I'm not going to go through all this, but I do have some bullets that talk a little bit about what changed during the year. And if you look at that entity-wide, they are over on page 15. And this is probably really the only statement that we're going to look at very closely. So it's going to be the page at the top that says Statement of Net Position. This is where everything is put together on the city. So all your assets show up here. So this includes all your capital assets, your buildings, your streets, everything that the city owns, and all your debt shows up here. So this is the place, like I said earlier, where your accounting is most similar to other entities. There's a column for governmental activities. That's the thing that a city does that nobody else does. Your police protection, your streets, recreation and things like that. Your business activities tend to be your utilities where you charge a user charge and tend to recoup it. A couple minor changes with some new accounting standards, but really the most important thing to look at is if you look at the bottom of the page, it's called total net position, but that's really your equity. And at the end of the year, it was about just a little under $61 million. So obviously pretty healthy. $50 million of that is capital assets. Those are things you can't spend. Again, that's your buildings, your police vehicles, your equipment, all that type of stuff. And you've got $6.8 million that's unrestricted, which means you have discretion over what you spend that on. So at the end of the fiscal year, you're just a little over $60 million in equity. The statement of activities is on page 16. It basically shows your revenue and your expenses by functional category. So it basically tells you what it costs to provide public safety. It tells you what it costs to maintain the streets, public health, etc. You can look down the side. And then it just shows your general revenue that's not really allocable to any specific function. And again, if you look at kind of down at the bottom, the changes in that position is similar to net income in a business. The governmental activities went up about $1.5 million. The business type activities went up just under $95,000. So overall, the city went up $1.6 million. And you can see the detail there. And I've hit the highlights so you can go back and read those. Any questions on those two statements? This is not in your financial statements anywhere, but I always like to give it because it shows, we've gone back and shown the last 4 years. So you can see we've kept it between governmental activities, business type, and the total. So if you go back to fiscal year 11, your assets were, if I read this right, a little over 74 million, and now you're up to about 76 million. So you can kind of see the increase in your assets over the last couple of years. You can see the decrease in your liabilities over the last couple of years, which obviously means your equity is going to go up. And then we've got information on the revenues over the past couple of years, expenses, and then the net change, or basically net income. So that's just some information for you that doesn't really appear real clearly in the financial statements anywhere. We just thought you might find it interesting. The governmental fund financial statements, we're not going to go through these in any detail. The fund financial statements are broken into governmental funds, and again, those are services that the city does that nobody else does, and it's called enterprise funds, or it's basically your utility funds. There's 4 statements there. It kind of explains what they are, and I've got the changes in those so you can know what changed from this year to last year. The proprietary fund statements, they're on pages 21, 22, and 23. And again, I've got some highlights there of what went on during there that you can go back and look at those as well. There are some changes, obviously, but I'd say really nothing that was huge. Okay, but I'd be glad to go through any of those statements if you'd like me to. Footnotes, if you look at the bottoms of all the financial statements, they say the notes to financial statements are an integral part of the financial statements, and that's because numbers don't tell the whole story. And so the footnotes basically go through and explain a lot of different things that you see in the statements. They're on pages 24 to 43, and they really are key to understanding what's recorded. Note 1 is your accounting policies. It goes through and explains how things get recorded, when they're recognized, gives you just some more basic information on the day-to-day accounting. Overall, the notes are pretty consistent with the prior year. We've noted that there are some changed or new notes. If you look at note 1, this year there's a new accounting standard, then there's some new terminology, deferred outflows, deferred inflows. Nobody but the Accounting Standards Board really gets this, but it's a required change, so there's a footnote that talks about that. The pension plan, there's a footnote in there, shows your current obligation, gives a lot of information. Whoops. Talks about what's going on in your pension plan. Note 15, your post-employment plan changed this year, and so that footnote describes what the change was. You changed the retiree benefits, which allowed you to kind of take some liabilities off your balance sheet. And then there was a prior period adjustment, and that was related to the implementation of the new accounting standard. So it wasn't a correction of an error or anything like that, but there was a new accounting standard where we had to go back and restate prior years. So if you go back and look, those are the notes that are different than last year. When you look at the notes that we think are key out of all of them to look at, other than note 1, the accounting policies, is note 6 on capital assets. Obviously, if you've got $50 million invested in your capital assets, that's a pretty big deal. So note 6 gives you information on your capital assets. Note 7 and 8 are information about the debt that the city has, so you can look there and you can find out the terms, the maturities, different things like that. And then note 11, commitments and contingencies. So those are things just to alert the reader to what might be going on that's not recorded, but there's just some information out there. Any questions on the footnotes? So that was really all I was going to cover on the financial statements themselves. Obviously, there's supplementary information that has information that's both required or just more informative, and then like I talked about, the statistical information. So that's really all I'm going to cover unless you have some questions. The next report I'm going to cover is one we issue every year. It is required under auditing standards. It's an auditor communication letter about the audit process itself. So it talks again about what our responsibility was. It talks about the planned scope and timing of the audit. A lot of it's kind of boilerplate, so I'm not going to go through a lot of it. So the couple things I want to point out really are related to the significant audit findings. There's no change in your internal accounting policy, so you didn't change how you recognize anything. There were 2 new accounting standards that you did did implement, and if you look at that footnote on the prior period adjustment, it explains the impact of it. But basically, you used to capitalize or show as an asset bond issuance costs. The accounting standard said, new accounting standard basically says you just expense them now, so we had to go back and write off those bond issuance costs. So not a big deal, but you did have some dollars capitalized there. Significant estimates I've listed here. Anytime you do a financial statement at a point in time, some things you know for sure, like you know cash you have in the bank, that type of thing, but some things you have to estimate. So the key estimates, in our opinion, are the allowance for uncollectible receivables, how much of your utility billings are you going to collect? Are you going to collect 100%, 95%? The useful life of capital assets, how long things are going to last, that's an estimate. Fair value of some of the contributions in the post-closure liability related to landfill. So those are the biggest estimates in there. We look at how Roger estimates them just to make sure they make sense, they're reasonable, and we think that they are. Disclosures we've talked about for government, they're as neutral, consistent, and clear as they can be. I know there's a lot there, but we do read through them both to make sure they comply with accounting standards, but to make sure that, if you read them, you can understand them. And we talked about capital assets, debt, commitments, and contingencies already. Best thing is we have no difficulties doing the audit. Roger and his staff do a lot of work to get ready for us. They prepare a lot of work papers, pull information, and really we've got the audit process where it's going pretty smoothly. And I was talking to Roger the other day. I mean, it's from the time I started working on this as kind of a staff person to now, the city has made huge strides in what they do for the audit and their internal accounting. It used to be we posted all kinds of entries, and now really over the years, Roger and Vicki do a lot of that work. So they've really strengthened what they do on an annual basis for the audit, and I think that really reflects positively on the city. We didn't have any material adjusting entries to the financial statements, and obviously no disagreements with management. Roger's pretty good about letting me know what goes on during the year, so if there's a big issue, we talk about it before year-end rolls around. So again, the audit went really smoothly. Everyone that we talked to, answered our questions, that type of thing. So obviously a good report on the audit itself. The management letter, I've got some information. If you remember, I talked about the risk assessment process where in order to figure out how we're going to audit, we have to understand how things work. So we don't do enough work to give an opinion on internal control, but obviously if we observe things, we report them. We go through a process, we list everything we find, we evaluate to figure out how big a deal it is, and I've got some definitions there. But this year we did not identify any material weaknesses that needed to be reported, and so we did not issue a management letter. So that's a good thing that you did not get that report, because that means there's no material weaknesses that we found. Any questions on either one of those reports? Okay. You can go through. I like to give definitions because that way you can go back and look and see what we look at. One thing I do want to bring up, we've been talking about it for a couple of years, it's actually here now, and that's the new pension accounting standard. The standard itself is effective for years beginning after June 15, 2014, so that's going to be you for next year. So for 9/30/15, the biggest things at a high level are generally you're going to record a liability on those entity-wide statements. Those are the two front ones for basically your unfunded pension liabilities. It'll also show up on the utility funds themselves. It will not show up on the governmental funds. So essentially you're going to have a liability. Don't know how much yet. They're working on figuring that out, but it's anticipated most everybody's going to have a pretty significant liability. It's going to change how you recognize expense on the financial statements. It will not change how you fund it. So there's not going to be any change in your cash flow as a result of this. Loggers is still going to say, here's what you need to pay, here's what the actuary says, that's what you're going to pay. So the standard doesn't change your cash flow at all. It just changes what you recognize in the financial statements. And sometimes people lose sight of that. Loggers is really working hard to figure out a way to get you this information because most of it's going to come from their records, from their actuary. Even though it's the city's responsibility, you really don't have the ability to do the calculations or to add the footnotes without their help. So we actually audit loggers, so we're kind of on both sides. We're telling them here's what City of Mexico needs and working with them to do that. So next year you'll see a pretty significant change in those entity-wide statements and the footnotes. Most of the other accounting standards out there, the new ones aren't any big deal, but this one is a big deal.
there'll be a substantial increase in our liabilities then on the entryway statements.
Yes. If you look at, and this is a really rough estimate, let me find the right page for you. If you look on page 51 of the financial statements, under the new standard, they have to calculate things a little bit differently, so I can't tell you that this is what it is, but you can kind of see the actuarial value of the plan assets, the accrued liability. So under the current methods of calculating that, what your unfunded liability is. So actually, you're pretty well funded in all reality in comparison to a lot of plans. A lot of plans I see, they're down in the 80% or below funding. I think the city over the years has done a good job of funding it. It's not going to be exactly that because they have to change the way they value the assets and the way they value the liability, but that gives you some indication of what the size might be. But really, 93% even under the current standards is pretty good.
Yeah, one of the things that GFOA is wanting to implement this is because some pension plans have their growth based on double-digit returns on investment. And of course, as we know, from 2008 to 2012-13, that wasn't possible. So this is going to set some standards of a more reasonable return on investment. So that's why you're going to see some of the entities see their unfunded liability go up significantly. Loggers is relatively conservative. They've used the 7% range, which is a range that they've been able to achieve over the decades that they've been in existence.
Yeah, it looks like they're pretty solid on that.
They are. We've actually been with Loggers since 1968, so we're one of the first entities to be in that retirement system. And that's why we're, ratio-wise are highly funded compared to the average that is within that same system.
Yeah, 92, 93%.
It's very high from what I see of others. So the impact on you may not be as significant as others, but there will definitely be something recorded.
And that'll be footnoted at some point to whereby the average person who looks at that would understand that we didn't increase our liabilities voluntarily. It was an increase that was more or less put upon us by the accounting standards.
And reported in the financials.
Yeah. The first year we implemented, Roger will have something in the MD&A explaining this was a change in accounting principle, and then in the footnotes we'll make it very clear that this is just an accounting standard requirement.
Gotcha.
But again, like I said, it does not change your cash flow, so it doesn't change budgeting, anything like that. Your cash flow is still going to be similar. It's going to be whatever Logger says you have to pay, and so your cash flow will not change.
Going back to when we made a change in our OPEB as far as health for retirees, those numbers would have been in the financials had we not made a change this past year.
Yeah.
Which was a significant amount of money, as council's aware.
Yes. Any other questions on the financial statements, the audit process, or anything whatsoever? If you do, let Roger know, or you can obviously always find me. Just shoot me an email or call me. I'll be glad to answer whatever questions. Otherwise, we really do appreciate the opportunity to do the audit. We know it's a big responsibility for you to hear from us every year, and we also appreciate everyone's cooperation while we do the audit.
So the summary is we've had a clean audit and no additional recommendations.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have the approval of the minutes. I move approval of the minutes for the January 12th, 2015 meeting.
Second.
Nichols,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Lesh,
Yes. Under resolutions this evening, we have Bill number 2015-04, a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a construction contract with Urban Built Contractors Incorporated for improvements to the municipal swimming pool filter area. This is up for reading and passage. Bruce?
Yes, Your Honor, this is one of the steps to get the pool back operational for the next couple of years and to cover the bids and what we're doing. I'm going to turn to Chad Shoemaker.
Thank you for allowing us to bring this tonight. As you know, it's been a long road to getting this to you. As you are aware, the budget allows for various improvements to the filter area, mechanicals and conductors of the municipal swimming pool that date back to a failure in that system in the end of July this past year. Bids were advertised in the Mexico Ledger and also mailed to 15 contractors. 2 bids were received. J. Lewis Crum Corporation of Columbia, Missouri, and Urban Built Constructors of Chillicothe. Urban Built submitted a bid totaling $59,900, and the J. Lewis Crum Corporation submitted a bid totaling $70,696 for the improvements. After the consultant contracted Urban Built to make sure that we had a good bid and everybody's on the same page, they recommended that we add a different kind of gear operator to the 12-inch valves than the engineer had originally specified. The engineer agreed that that would be a good addition to the project, and that change of $635 would bring the contract amount to $60,535, which is still well below the bid submitted by J. Lewis Crum. The resolution attached will authorize city manager to sign the agreement which outlines the project, contract times, and contract price. The staff recommends the council proceed with reading and passage of the resolution authorizing the city manager to enter the contract with Urban Built Constructors Incorporated for improvements to the municipal swimming pool filter area. Obviously, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
This will keep us going for, what, 20 years? Not joking.
No, sorry, Steve. You're getting new pipes and valves and new electrical conductors into that area. We're still using the exact same kind of system it was before. We were able to eliminate a couple valves that were going to be pricey, replacements because of where they were. We're going to be able to avoid taking the top off of the filter pit, which was one of our original concerns. The engineers did a good job of figuring out a better way to do it. But after we get this done, we've got some restroom improvements need to be done. This price doesn't include, we probably still need some replacement pumps and a replacement motor on the shelf at the end of this so that we can do exactly what we're talking about. And then, we're shooting for 3 or 4 years, just,
So this should take care of most of the leaks, so.
This doesn't take care of any leaks, other than this just gets us operating again.
Yeah.
So it takes care of the 10-inch line that broke, down in the filter pit, flooded everything, which was leaking. But I'm saying you're probably taking care of less than 10% of the leakage.
Refresh my memory, did we budget $100,000 for repair of the pool, or was
Yes.
it more than that?
$100,000. We asked for $100,000. We budgeted $200,000.
Oh, okay.
We're really trying hard to stay in that original number that we gave you. Like I said, this is phase 1 of these repairs. This gets us operational. There's a few other things we need to do to make sure that if things go wrong, we can get back up quicker than we used to be able to in the past, which includes having duplicate pumps, a backup motor if we can afford it at the end of the project.
Will any of this work be usable if we build a new pool or revamp
Yeah, the
it?
lift station improvements will be usable if we make further improvements. The vast majority of this is not going to be used in another project, unfortunately.
But then, in your opinion, this will get us started?
This will get us operating.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
So it's kind of the baling wire and the transmission.
Yeah, okay. I understand.
What was our average gates on the pool? How much do they make?
Roger can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we generally, I say we want to gate around 21 to 22,000 a year. And then concessions, yeah, will be in addition of that. Another 7,000 to 9,000 in concessions probably.
Don't make money with the pool.
What's that?
You don't make money with the pool.
It's a hole in the water you throw money into.
What about anything else in government service?
We make more than we make on the playgrounds.
Thank you for doing what you're doing with the least amount of money.
We're trying to keep it as cheap as we can.
I'll make a motion. I read bill number, Chris, bill number 2015-4.
Second.
Nichols?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Lash?
Yes.
Bill number 2015-4, resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into a construction contract with Urban Built Constructors Incorporated for improvements to the municipal swimming pool filter area. Whereas there is a need to make improvements to the municipal pool filter area, and funding has been appropriated in the budget for improvements, and whereas Urban Built Constructors Incorporated submitted the lowest and best bid for the improvements, now therefore be it resolved by the council of the city of Mexico, Missouri as follows. Section 1, the city manager authorized to enter into a contract with Urban Built Constructors Incorporated of Chillicothe, Missouri for improvements to the filter area of the municipal swimming pool. Section 2 of this resolution shall be in full force and effect from after the time passes. I move for passage of bill number 2015-4.
Second.
Nichols?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Lash?
Yes. Next, we have bill number 2015-5, a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement with the Knights of Columbus for requested funding from the Mexico tourism tax. This is up for reading and passage. Bruce?
Yes, Your Honor, the Tourism Commission has met and made a recommendation, and to cover the recommendation, I will turn to Roger Haynes.
The Tourism Commission met on Tuesday, January 20th, and they did have a submission from the Knights of Columbus to offer advertising funding for their second annual Mid-Missouri Beer Fest, which would be held on May 9th, the afternoon of May 9th. They requested $4,950, and after discussion on their request, the commission recommended an amount to be funded of $1,500. Last year, which was their first time to hold this event, they were funded for $700. They estimate they had about 500 in attendance. They're hoping for this project this activity to grow and anticipate hopefully around 1,000 people this next year. Staff does recommend that the council concur with the Mexico Tourism Commission's recommendation and proceed with reading and passage of the attached resolution. I would be glad to answer any questions.
Do you know what this does? I mean, what it's about?
Basically, they call in a number, 15 to 20 microbreweries, and they serve beer at this event. It's out at the Knights of Columbus location out north on 15. Last year, they did have a band come in. I think they anticipate doing the same thing this year. It's an event that runs about 4 to 5 hours in the afternoon. They do try to wrap it up early enough in the evening so that it would encourage people to come back into Mexico and spend money in our shops and restaurants.
Your Honor, I would move for reading of bill number 2015-5.
Second.
Nichols?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Lash?
Yes.
Bill number 2015-5, a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute an agreement with the Knights of Columbus for requested funding from the Mexico tourism tax. Whereas the Mexico Tourism Commission recommends to City Council that the Knights of Columbus be allowed to receive tourism funding for their tourism advertising campaign. Now therefore be it resolved by the Council of the City of Mexico, Missouri as follows. Section 1, that the city manager be authorized to enter into an agreement on behalf of the City of Mexico with the Knights of Columbus for tourism funding. Section 2, this resolution shall be in full force and effect from and after the time of its passage. I move for passage of bill number 2015-05.
Nichols?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Lush?
Yes. Next, we have Bill Number 2015-6, a resolution authorizing the City of Mexico, Missouri, adopting all aspects pertaining to the City of Mexico in the Audrain County Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan and the effort to become a disaster-resistant community. This is up for reading and passage. Bruce?
Your Honor, under the new rules for the federal mitigation funding, local governments are required to have a Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA-approved hazard mitigation plan, and they have to have it in place in order to receive federal mitigation funding. Under the initiative set forth by the Missouri's State Emergency Management Agency, the Missouri Association of Councils of Governments agreed to meet the challenge of developing the county and municipal plans throughout the state. Through the state agency, through SEMA, a scope of work, Audrain County contracted with the Mark Twain Regional Council of Governments and participated fully in the preparation of the plan. Once this plan is approved, Audrain County, the cities within the county, will be eligible for future mitigation assistance from FEMA and will be able to more effectively carry out mitigation activities to lessen adverse impact on future disasters within Audrain County. The Mark Twain Regional Council of Governments collaborated with each of the local governments and the 3 school districts within Audrain County to assure participation and sense of ownership among the local government officials. The Audrain County Natural Hazardous Mitigation Action Plan is the result of that effort. This plan is not to deal with those events that happen on a daily basis, which do not cause widespread problems and are handled routinely by the county and city officials. However, this plan will deal with natural disasters of flooding, earthquakes, drought, extreme heat, severe winter weather, severe storms, tornadoes, dam failures, wildfires, levee failure, landslides, and sinkholes. The occurrence of any of these would create needs and cause suffering that victims cannot alleviate without assistance and that requires a commitment from governmental resources. The mission of the Audrain County Natural Hazards Mitigation Plan is to promote sound public policy designed to protect citizens, critical facilities, infrastructure, private property, and the environment from natural hazards. This can be achieved by increasing public awareness, documenting the resources for risk reduction and loss prevention, and identifying activities to guide the county towards building a safer and more sustainable community. At this time, Your Honor, we would recommend that the council adopt all aspects pertaining to the City of Mexico in the Audrain County Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan and the effort to become a disaster resistance community and proceed with the reading and passage of the attached resolutions.
Did you want to comment on this? This is the mitigation plan. It's a little document. I think Steve's going to read it. Did you want to say anything?
That's all I have. I tried to summarize it with those comments.
You said dam failure and dam sinkhole?
Page number 1.
I guess this is basically a county thing.
It's a
This is-
county-wide plan. Audrain County has already adopted it, and it was a plan that was done, as you say, a multi-jurisdictional plan for Audrain County in order to accomplish what we needed to for FEMA and for the state emergency management.
And then with this plan in place, then we're allowed to access federal funding then? Is that what allows us to do?
Without the plan, you cannot.
Yeah, okay.
So Good plan.
And if there is any question, they will ask to see it.
Yeah.
You want to read it? Okay, I'll do it. I make a motion to read bill number 2015-6.
Second?
Nichols?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Blash?
Yes.
I should have made that by title only. Bill number 2015-6, a resolution of the City of Mexico, Missouri adopting all aspects pertaining to the City of Mexico in the Audrain County Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan in the effort to become a disaster-resistant community. Whereas the City of Mexico recognizes that no community is immune to disaster and that the city being located in a state where it is vulnerable to hazardous disasters desire to become more resistant to such disasters, and whereas the City of Mexico has in the past and will in the future continue to undertake measures to reduce the adverse impact of disasters on our community, to include but not exclusively participating in programs, activities with SEMA, FEMA, other state and federal agencies, other government, county governments, and other local jurisdictions within the county. Now therefore be it resolved by the city mayor and the city council of Mexico, Missouri as follows. Section 1, that the efforts to become more disaster resistant is deemed worthy of support and that all aspects pertaining to the City of Mexico and the Audrain County Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan be adopted. Section 2, that all aspects pertaining to the City of Mexico and the Audrain County Multi-Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan shall be monitored, evaluated, updated, and resubmitted to this government body for readoption periodically, at least every 5 years from the date of the last adoption. Section 3, this resolution shall be full force and effect from the time of passage. I move for passage of bill number 2015-6.
Second?
Nichols?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Blash?
Yes. Our last resolution this evening is Bill number 2015-7, resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Municipal Code Corporation for the recodification of the Mexico City Code. This is up for reading and passage. Bruce?
Yes, the city council is aware of the current concerns regarding the city's code and many of the areas being out of date and the code needing to be rewritten. In our current budget, we allowed for $25,750 for the recodification process. Because this is a professional service, contact was made with the two leading codification companies that provide these services within the state, Sullivan Publications and Municipal Code Corporation, MuniCode, were contacted to provide an outline for the services, a scope of work that they were looking at, an estimate of cost for this process. MuniCode provided the best and lowest cost proposal of $15,750 with an amount not to exceed $16,650 to research, edit, index, and publish a new code. The services will also include updates to the city's current online services and will also improve the searchable capabilities online. MuniCode is the current provider of codification services for the city, and we have been working with MuniCode since 1988. Their scope of work has been attached. Therefore, we are recommending the council proceed with the reading and passage of the attached resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into agreement with Municipal Code Corporation for the recodification and rewriting of the city's municipal code.
What was the bid from Sullivan?
It was an estimate, it was over this. Do you remember the exact number? It was, what, at least 5,000, I think, difference, wasn't it?
Well, normally it's in here and I didn't say it, so.
And who works with them to accomplish this task?
Everyone. We've already sat down as an entire staff to look at this, and the city attorney will be heavily involved because there are sections that apply to each department that will be rewritten and updates, but the main contact will be through Marcy, a city clerk, and through the city attorney. and he will have a lot of reading as well, so.
When we did this almost 20 years ago, they actually sent an individual down. We have meetings, we go through the state statutes that have been revised, update our code to match the state statute. Frankly, do lots of research, and he'll take the ordinances that have been passed, he'll recodify them so they're all together in the same section. It's a laborious, tedious task. Kind of like it all.
And each department head will be expected to read each of their sections, because as we know, and we've already talked with them, and they've met with the company already, as there are certain things within each section that we've noted through over time that needs to be updated or changed, and so they'll get that opportunity as well to make their suggestions. Also, the company will present to us the way other communities within the state do these types of things as well, too, so that we can have some point of reference on how the best way to handle certain things. But it will, what did I see, Marcy, time-wise, we're probably looking at almost a year to completion?
Yes.
As soon as all said and done, it's going to be online also.
Yes.
Is now.
It is now, and it will be as well, and it'll increase the search capabilities, so whether you're looking for something, a citizen's looking for something, it will help them find it quicker.
That's, and Lou, correct me if I'm wrong, but we won't be changing the law in any material aspect. Only we can do that by an ordinance that's offered. It's just to bring it up to date, make sure the wording is proper, and do anything the statute says needs to be done.
Correct. And if we find an inconsistency, then we'll have to bring that to you by ordinance so that you can consider it and determine whether or not to adopt it. It's not like writing regulation.
Right.
What they will do is they will keep, in essence, a spreadsheet of all the changes they recommend. And if there is anything material, if you will, that will all be a part of the adopting resolution that they will identify of what the changes are, and they will present it to you.
Your Honor, if there's no further questions, I move for reading of bill number 2015-07.
Second.
Nichols?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Nash?
Yes.
Bill number 2015-7, a resolution authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with the Municipal Code Corporation for the recodification of the Mexico City Code. Whereas the City of Mexico has selected Municipal Code Corporation, MuniCode, for the recodification of the Mexico City Code, and whereas an agreement needs to be signed with MuniCode for their services, now therefore be it resolved by the Council of the City of Mexico, Missouri as follows. Section 1, the city manager is hereby authorized to execute an agreement with Municipal Code Corporation for the recodification of the Mexico City Code. Section 2, this resolution shall be in full force and effect from and after the time of its passage. And I move for passage of bill number 2015-07.
Second.
Nichols?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Nash?
Yes. Under other business this evening, we have the claims, and I move we pay the claims.
Second.
Nichols?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Nash?
Yes. Council comments, Councilman Nichols.
But Roger, after 20 or 25 consecutive, I think you've got it down pat. Every year it gets better, she said, so eventually they're going to be paying us to do our audit. So, thank you very much for what you do. And love the weather. That's all I've got.
Councilman Miller.
I didn't get down exactly what the auditor said, but she noted in substantially this wording that Roger and Vicki prepare and provide a substantial amount of information to the auditors, how much it was appreciated, and that it reflected well on the city. Well, it reflects well on both of you too, so thank you very much for everything you do. I was glad to get the update on the Moore Street project. I hope to live to see it. Not so much for me, but for my children to see it. That's all.
Bruce?
Your Honor, I did attend the annual Chamber dinner and awards presentation Friday night, and I certainly want to say congratulations to all of the winners of the awards, and they were highlighted in the Ledger today, so we appreciate all of their efforts and work that they do on behalf of the community throughout the year.
I too want to congratulate Roger and Vicki and everyone who worked so hard on the audit, and to have an audit that's clean with no recommendations is good. So that means we're doing well in that regard. So I did want to read something that Bruce sent out in his weekly email to us. I did not know this, and it says Mexico ranks third as the most affordable places to live in Missouri. Smart Asset 2014 ranking of the most affordable places to live in Missouri based on relatively low property taxes, homeowners insurance fees, mortgage payments, local median income, employment opportunities, and quality of life. Mexico ranks third in the state. And says it's the first time we've been in those rankings. So I think that speaks well for the things that's happening here in Mexico. And we hope these things continue in 2015 and forward. So, and I too glad to see that the Morris Street project is moving. I know it took a lot of work, and thank you, Greg, or Councilman Miller, for the letter that you wrote to get some people moving, so to make that happen. So thank you. Next, we have public comments. Any public comments? Hearing none, or seeing none, I move we adjourn.
Second.
Whoops, excuse me.
Executive session.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was only hopeful. Adjournment into, I move that we adjourn into executive session pursuant to the revised statutes of Missouri 610.021 litigation.
Second.
Nichols? Yes. Miller?
Yes.
Lesh?
Yes.